What's up, guys? It's Austin with Pickleball Playbook, and today I'm going to be teaching you the 4 types of drops, how to hit each, and we're going to be weighing the positives and negatives of each. Now, obviously, you get on here and maybe you want to learn how to hit a topspin drop. You are more than welcome to skip ahead. I'll put the timestamps in the description for you guys. That being said, make sure that you actually know how to hit a flat drop before you move on to any other drops. Because if you just skip to the topspin drop and you don't know how to hit a flat drop, you're not going to have the foundation to be able to hit a topspin drop.
Okay, that brings us to the first drop, which is the flat drop. And a lot of people overlook this drop and just say, hey, I want to learn the advanced drop. I want to learn how to do a topspin drop or a slice drop. But really, you're going to take a lot longer time learning those drops if you don't build the foundation with the flat drop. So what I suggest to anybody that's starting or even an intermediate player is to really hone in the consistency on their flat drop before anything else so that they can build a solid foundation to be able to hit those more advanced drops. Now, with this drop, obviously there are negatives and positives, but starting with the negatives is, since it is so simple and we're just lifting low to high, it gives our opponents a lot of the time a very attackable ball. So it can a lot of the times put us in a defensive position unless we're hitting very small margins consistently, which isn't happening with a lot of players. So it can make it very difficult, since we're hitting it to our opponents, it can make it very difficult to not loft the ball up every once in a while and create an attackable ball for them. The other thing is, obviously this has no spin. I say no spin, but obviously every shot that we hit in pickleball has some spin. But since it's flat, right, and we're not hitting more underspin than topspin, it's not applying any pressure on our opponents. So we're not giving our opponents a shot that's maybe going to make them feel uncomfortable with this flat drop. So really the only 2 negatives of this shot, when you really hone it in, it's just going to be a consistent drop, and it's going to allow you to be able to transition into the kitchen very simply and very easily. So some of the positives of this drop is, since it's such a simple stroke, it's very, very easy to learn. Okay, there's a low barrier to entry with this shot. It's very, very easy to learn the actual motion, and after you get enough reps in, you can really hone in those small margins to be able to hit it consistently. Another major plus is we see tons of pros using this drop. Okay, I mean, every pro uses this drop in certain situations, so they don't just overlook it and say, I'm only hitting topspin drops, I'm only hitting slice drops. Every single pro is going to be hitting this drop at one time or another, depending on the situation that they're in. So that's one of the positives, is if you can learn how to do this, then you're obviously going to build the foundation to be able to, get to a higher level, be able to play higher level pickleball. I'm not saying that you're going to become a pro by learning the flat, but since it's used by them, you would also want to be able to use it. Another main positive of this, since it's so simple, you can really be consistent with it. This is one of those drops where you're doing the same motion every single time, hitting the ball out in front of you. Such a small motion, we're not trying to add spin, that you can be extremely consistent with it, and you can learn it very, very, very quickly. Okay, I'm going to teach you now how to do the actual flat drop, and it's a very, very simple drop as we talked about before, but there's a couple of steps that we need to follow, and starting with early preparation. So what that means is, obviously we prepare early for the shot that we're going to take. If I know that it's going to my forehand side, as soon as I know, I'm going to put my paddle down by my side low, okay? I'm obviously not going all the way to the ground, right, bending my knees or something like that. But I'm just putting my paddle down to my side. I'm early preparing for that shot that they're hitting me. The rule of thumb that I like to use is, before the ball crosses the plane of the net, I want to have my early preparation for my third shot drop. So before it crosses the plane of the net, I am there. I know that it's going to be on my forehand side. Or before it crosses the plane of the net, I'm here and I know it's going to be on my backhand side. You'd be surprised at how many amateur players will load up right when the ball bounces on their side, which makes no sense, but nobody knows that they're doing it, right? Only the people that are watching them that are maybe more advanced, they're like, yeah, you're super late on that. So you'll see with those players, they hit majority of their shots in the net because they're loading and hitting as quickly as they can, and they're late. So that ball is going to ultimately go down. It's going to be very inconsistent. So don't overlook early preparation. Make sure you're preparing prior to the ball crossing the plane of the net, if possible. Okay, after you've done that, we are now low. Our paddle face is going to be open to where we want to go. Okay, so we don't want to, and you'll see with a lot of players as well, is their paddle may be down, but it's facing towards the side fence like this, which makes no sense. You don't want to obviously hit it with your frame here. So make sure that it's open so that you can take away that step. So as we early prepare, our paddle face is open. And then we're going to keep the stroke nice and simple, and we're just simply lifting to shoulder to about head height, depending on how far back in the court we are. So that's something that you have to figure out for yourself. Find your range, right, with how far up you need to go to be able to hit it to where you want to go. Obviously, these ones that I'm hitting, I'm not hitting any added power coming at me, so I might have to come a little bit higher just for practicing these. But that's the next step. So keeping our paddle face open, we're coming up to about shoulder height. And then the most essential thing after that is making sure that our paddle is facing where we want to go. So it's facing upwards and towards where we want to go. If I want to go up the line, it's going to be facing up the line. If I want to go cross court, it's going to be facing cross court. So you can see just that slight angle change will be able to help us get it there, as well as our motion going in that direction. We don't want to turn our paddle face throughout the motion. We're just keeping our paddle face open, nice and simple. If I want to go up the line, it's going to be facing up the line. If I want to go cross court, it's going to be facing cross court when I finish, just like this. And I'm simply just going low to high. Okay, it's the same with the backhand side. I'm going to be coming low to high. If I want to go cross court, it's going to be facing slightly cross court. If I want to go up the line, it's going to be facing slightly up the line. Now, the last essential thing that you guys need to focus on with this is making sure that your wrist is locked, meaning it's locked up. It's not loose like this or loose like this. It's locked straight as you're hitting through the ball. If it's not, it's going to be very inconsistent because your paddle face is going to be changing angles throughout the motion. Also, what that will do is create more pop on the ball. You're going to pop a ton of balls up. So make sure that you keep it locked in loaded, and it's not flimsy like a fish's tail or something like that. So with the backhand, low to high, finishing at shoulder height or around there. It might be a little bit higher if you're further back, might be a little shorter if you're further in. But focus on that and focus on finishing where you want to go. And that's how you hit a flat drop. All right, that brings us to the second kind of drop. This is my personal favorite. And the reason for that is because it feels good to me to hit this drop majority of the time. Whether I'm in a stressful defensive situation or I'm in an offensive situation, it just feels good all around. That being said, I'm not suggesting that it should be your favorite type of drop and the only one that you hit, or it's not like it's the only one that I hit anyway, but. All right, that brings us to our second kind of drop, which is the underspin drop. Now this is my personal favorite type of drop because I like to create underspin on the ball. It just feels good all around to me, and I can do it fairly consistently. I won't say very consistently, but fairly consistently where I can hit it in, majority of the time. So this is one that I rely on whether I'm in a defensive position stretching for the ball or I'm in an offensive position. I'll a lot of the time throw in an underspin drop to apply some pressure on my opponents, and because I know, it's in the arsenal and I can get it in majority of the time. So this, just like with the flat drop, has positives and negatives. Starting with the negatives, since you're putting underspin on the ball's traveling towards your opponents like this. And so with that, it's going to be rising up. So it's very easy to loft this ball up. It's going to have to really, really rise before it comes down a lot of the time. So the good rule of thumb to use is when you hone these in, is you want the ball to be traveling downwards as soon as it reaches the plane of the net. So it's coming up, 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 and then it starts traveling downwards as soon as it actually reaches the actual plane of the net. So up, 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 and then it's traveling downwards. If you can do that, you're in good hands with this kind of drop. Another negative of this drop, other than lofting it up, is it's difficult to time, okay? Because we're actually cutting under the ball as we're hitting through. So since we're doing that, we're essentially scooping under the ball. It can be extremely difficult to be able to get the timing correct every single time. So those are really the two main negatives of this drop. Moving on to the positives, there are tons. So since we're hitting underspin, when it lands on your opponent's side, it's actually going to skid at them. So essentially it lands and it's going to stay low. It's not going to pop back up again. So it can be very difficult for your opponents to be able to hit anything offensive. If you do it correctly, it'll be impossible for them to hit anything offensive. But also it causes lots of pop-ups since that ball stays so low and they're barely getting to it and it's skidding at them, shoots at them really quick. It makes it extremely difficult for them to be able to pick it up off of the ground and not pop it up to you. So among the positives, since you're putting this underspin, makes it extremely difficult for your opponents to hit anything attackable at you. You can really rush into the net very, very quickly if you hit it correctly.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about how to actually do the slice drop on the forehand and the backhand side. They're essentially going to be the same exact stroke with just minor differences, being we're hitting it with the front of our hand and then the other side we're hitting it with the back of our hand. Okay, so step number one, what we're going to focus on is we actually start right around hip area, maybe slightly higher, maybe slightly lower. We're going to start there and we're going to create kind of a Nike swoosh as we scoop under the ball. So I start here, I want to make sure you guys can see me, but I start here and I'm gonna swoosh under the ball, kind of scoop the ice cream out, right? And I'm just grazing under the ball. I'm not really impacting or hitting into the ball. I'm scooping under and then I'm finishing right around shoulder height. So I start at about hip height, finish at about shoulder height, cutting under the ball. It's the same with the backhand side. Start about hip height and I'm cutting under the ball. So just remember, we're grazing under the ball. It really comes down to hearing that, you know, sound as I hit through it rather than a pow, pow, pow. So we want to be getting that as we scoop under. And notice how my paddle face is changing. This is why the timing of this is so difficult. It's because my paddle face starts like this, like I'm almost going to hit the ball with my frame. I cut under and then it finishes at the total opposite angle. So it starts here, finishes here. Same with the backhand, starts here, finishes here as I cut under the ball. Don't have to focus on that as much. All that you want to focus on really is just making sure that you're getting that graze sound as you're coming through the ball. So essentially I start at that hip and then I'm finishing up high, whether it's the backhand or the forehand side. I'm coming through, scooping, think scoop as you're hitting these. The timing of this will be difficult in the beginning, but you guys will be able to figure it out through reps, just like with any other stroke. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the topspin drop. Starting with this one, it obviously has positives and negatives. Starting with the negatives, this is a very hard drop to learn. It's probably the hardest of the three to learn, just because you really have to graze over the ball and also get it over the net. So since we're hitting topspin, where the ball is revolving towards our opponents with topspin, that ball's going to be dropping. So this one's most often missed in the net. So getting over that barrier, you're going to have to aim higher, but also you really have to make fantastic contact to be able to produce enough topspin that you don't loft it up when you're aiming high, so that it drops as soon as it reaches the actual plane of the net. So those are some of the negatives of this drop. It's very, very difficult. I mean, it's the most difficult of the three for sure. But positives for this drop is that you can apply tons of pressure on your opponents. So since you're hitting with topspin, the ball's coming forward towards your opponents, rotating forward. When it lands, it's going to kick up at them. So it's very difficult for them to be able to control the ball and keep it in the kitchen when this happens. So that's one of the positives. Since you're putting all of this pressure, it makes it also very hard for your opponents to be able to attack, just like with the underspin drop. Makes it difficult for them to attack because it's kicking at them. So their timing has to be pretty close to impeccable if they're going to attack this. Since it is coming up a bit higher, it's a bit easier for them to attack than an underspin drop, because that underspin is staying so low, so they have to hit up. Whereas with this one, they just have to get the timing right. Okay, so for the topspin drop, essentially what we're going to be doing is hitting a ground stroke on both sides, but it's going to have a lot more of an upward motion, and we're going to graze the ball a lot more. So instead of, just like how we talked about with the underspin drop, instead of us hitting into it, we're going to be getting that sound coming over the ball. We're just grazing the edges. I want to act like as if this ball had hairs on it. We would just be touching the hairs as we come through. Whereas with the ground stroke, we're going to be coming outward and upward and actually hitting and plowing through the ball and grazing over it. This one's literally just graze, and we're just coming straight up the ball. So the way that it works, we're going to load up just like how we would for a ground stroke, have our unit turn, which is this, where we're facing our front shoulder towards our opponents. This is for the backhand side and the forehand side, but I'm showing you guys the backhand side, obviously. Turn my front shoulder, my dominant shoulder towards my opponents, and then I am going to drop my paddle down. I like to refer to this as petting the dog. So when we're petting the dog, we don't want to pet it with our frame. We want to pet it with the soft part of our paddle, with the actual face. So I'm going to put my palm downward so that I can get my actual paddle face downward. And I'm petting a small dog. It's not a Great Dane, right? It's not up here. I'm just petting like a medium-sized dog down here. And then what I'm doing from there is I'm coming upward, I'm coming forward slightly, and then up the ball. And it turns into this flick motion where I'm creating this windshield wiper. So I turn, get my unit turn, my front shoulders towards my opponents, drop, pet the dog, and then I'm literally just flicking up, and that's how short the motion is. Now, a lot of the time players can hit themselves in the face practicing this. Remember that we're going outward and upward. So I'm not just going straight up, upward. It's outward and upward towards, and I'm finishing right around shoulder height with the tip of my paddle. So it's just this little flick. Obviously, if you're further back in the court, you need more on it. You're gonna come all the way up. But essentially what you're focusing on is really grazing the ball, and we're not going out and up all the way. We're just going slightly out and slightly up. And it's this flick motion that's gonna be able to create the top spin. So remember, we're grazing up the ball as we hit it. We're not plowing into the ball as we hit it. Same with the forehand side, what we're gonna be doing, showing our opponents our non-dominant shoulder this time. I'm gonna drop, pet the dog, and then flick up. And notice how I'm finishing right here. It's not this big, huge motion where I'm coming all the way through. It's just a little flick. Getting the timing of this down is very difficult. So what I suggest doing is just hitting thousands of balls and trying to keep the form. Form is more important than anything else. So make sure that you're focusing on having the right form, and you're not just, oh, that was in. But really what you're doing is just a flat dink or a push dink. I mean, a push drop or a flat drop. So make sure that you're actually practicing what you want to get better at, and then it's going to pay dividends in the end. But it's going to be difficult. This one's extremely difficult. So just a quick recap, all that you need to remember: turn your non-dominant shoulder towards your opponents, drop and pet the dog, and then we're coming slightly outward and quickly upward as we flick through and create that windshield wiper. Okay, so the last one that we're going to talk about today is the drip. Now, this is the most legit drop that you can possibly hit, but it's definitely the most difficult of all of them to be able to time, to be able to get at your opponent's feet consistently. Maybe you'll be able to pull one out a match if that's all you go for, but you're going to hit tons of balls in the net. So essentially what the drip is it's a drive and a drop mixed together. So we're hitting a drive essentially that lands in the kitchen or maybe just behind the kitchen. So it's getting on our opponents really, really quick, making it extremely difficult for them to be able to get offensive, if not impossible, but also making it difficult for them to be able to transition in. So it is a tool that you want to have in the toolbox, but you're not going to be able to learn it until you learn how to hit a flat drop and then learn how to hit a top spin drop, because it's a way more advanced top spin drop. Okay, so with the drip, essentially what we're going to be doing is hitting a drive and a drop mixed together. So the way that we can do this is by keeping our ball very low over the net. We still want to go high percentage, but with this one, you really have to go pretty much low percentage until you get the reps in to where you can hit it consistently. So what I mean by low percentage is you have to aim low above the net. So you're going to be hitting tons of balls in the net in the beginning until you really get this shot down. So starting with the forehand side, what I'm going to be doing is I'm driving through the ball, but I am catching the ball just the edges, just the very fine hairs of the edges of the ball as I drive through it. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm doing a full ground stroke. I'm going 70% power. I'm aiming to hit it in the kitchen. In tennis, this is referred to as a chili dipper because it creates kind of a chili, you know how chilies have like that bend in them? It essentially creates that chili bend right at the end. So it's straight, and then right at the end is when it bends. So you have to be able to hone in your timing of grazing over the ball for that ball to be able to then drop into the court. So unit turn, I'm facing my non-dominant shoulder towards my opponents, okay? And then I am going to drop my paddle and I'm petting the dog on the head. I'm then going outward and upward. And it all comes down to the timing of hitting the ball out in front of me as much as I can help. And I'm grazing over the ball to be able to hit it in. Just gonna get that drop on it, land into the kitchen. That's the whole goal with it. Okay guys, that wraps up everything for this video. I hope that you have enjoyed it. Be sure to subscribe. I upload a new video just like this every single week. And I would be happy to continue to help you guys improve. I hope this has been helpful. Leave a comment below of what you want to learn about next, and I'll see you guys on the next one.